Welcome learners. This week we are going to discuss from block 2, that is on tribal policies and legislation. Today we are going to discuss the topic tribal territories and common property resources. We all know that common property resources and tribal territories are very important to the scheduled tribes or the people who are residing in the forest. Let us look at the objectives of this unit. In this unit, we shall discuss tribal territories and common property resources. The tribals have their own worldview concerning territory and property, very different from those of the other communities. After going through this unit, you should be able to develop an understanding of the importance of common property resources like forest, land and water based resources for the tribal people. Knowledge of the existing tribal policy in relation to the preservation of CPRs, and also you will get an idea about the legislative writs for tribal territories, and also you will get an insight into the reasons for the decline of CPRs. Now, ever since the origin of the human beings, we all know that they have been living in close proximity with natural environment, both biotic and abiotic. Now, let us see what is the biotic environment. This constitutes living organisms such as forest, animals, and abiotic environment. This constitutes non-living organism, that is land, water, air and etc. All these resources are indispensable for the human survival. All these resources are considered natural or free gift of nature. Centuries ago, there were plenty of resources, so no competition among the organisms, particularly humans, were evident and people used to access them freely. After the establishment of British colony in India, there was an unprecedented exploitation of resources by the British administrators. The local people were excluded from using the free resources, that is the colonial forest policies, and it was restricted to them from entering into the forest areas, as the intention of the colonial government was to exploit the natural resources which is available in India for their own profit. So, as a result, the natural resources declined adversely, affecting the people, particularly the forest dwellers who were greatly dependent on forest resources for their day-to-day livelihood and socio-cultural life. We still find such problems in the contemporary period. However, the supporters of the modern development approach, they hold the local people responsible for the decline of natural resources, although there are other external factors responsible for it. And if we look at in the post-independence era, both the state and center have been taking essential measures to control the declining resources and to balance the needs of the poor people in the form of laws and acts. And these legislations have, however, become fruitless due to certain external factors. So, the rural economy has been subjected to severe stress. Now, let us look at the meaning and features of tribal territory and common property resources. It is very difficult to define CPRs as there are plenty of attributes defining them. It refers to the natural resources commonly used by a village or a community. It is considered as a source of livelihood for the poor, landless and marginalized sections of the communities. It is an important natural resource for rural communities in most developing countries, including India. Many authors have defined the common property resources. One of the famous author, Jodha, in the year 1986 defines CPRs as the resources accessible to the whole community of a village and to which no individual has exclusive property rights. In the dry regions of India, they include village pastures, community forests, wasteland, common threshing grounds, waste dumping places, watershed drainages, village ponds, tanks, rivers, rivulets and riverbeds, etc. Another author, Agarwal, in the year 1995, he defined CPRs as the resources gathered by rural households from the village common and forests for personal use and sale, food, fuel, fodder, fiber, small timber, manure, bamboo, medicinal herbs, oils, material for house building and handicrafts, resin, gum, honey, spices and so on. There are also other authors who have defined CPR. Margaret in the year 1989 defines it as those resources in which a group of people has co-equal use rights, specifically rights that exclude the use of those resources by other people. Individual membership in the group of co-owners is typically conferred by membership in some or other group, such as a village or tribe, etc. The common property resources are of great importance to the rural poor, including tribal people, as they potentially meet their basic needs such as fuel, fodder, green manures, food, timbers and other materials. Jodha in the year 1990 is of the view that the rural poor receive the bulk of their fuel supplies and fodder from CPRs. CPR product collection is an important source of employment and income, especially during the periods when other opportunities are not existent. Few other authors like Arnold and Stewart in the year 1991, they have summarized the contributions of CPRs in the hill region and forest regions. The CPRs in the mid to high Himalayas are the main sources of high input of green manure. They are required to sustain upland agricultural production, that is in the hilly areas, and of grazing and collected animal fodder to sustain the livestock, which play a major role in the agricultural economy. They are also the source of the considerable amount of wood required for cooking, heating and house consumption. In the forest region, the importance of CPRs lies in their role in terms of minor forest produce for sale, food during lean periods, medical plants and other products of local use and sites for shifting cultivation. Since the past, these resources have been contributing a lot to the village economies. CPRs, apart from maintaining the ecological balance by way of checking soil erosion, deforestation and saltation, benefits the rural masses in terms of availability of fodder, fuel wood, small timbers, mulch and manure, fruits and medicinal herbs. CPRs play a crucial role in the economies of the poor who have very little access to remunerative income earning opportunities. Rao in the year 1990 has pointed out, given the peripheral position of the poor in relation to the mainstream economy and their meager access to remunerative income earning opportunities, a reduction in the access of CPRs would be a disaster to them. Bromley and Cernia in the year 1989, they view it not an object such as land, but it is a right to a benefit scheme. In the present environmental crisis, there is a long debate on the customary ownership of the common property rights. The UN document of 1966 defines customary rights as the rights to use or dispose of rights over land which rest neither on the exercise of brute force nor on evidence of right guaranteed by government statute, but on the fact that they are recognized as legitimate by the community. The rule governing the acquisition or transmission of these rights being explicit and generally known, though not normally recorded in writing. Generally, their territory does not have any boundaries as the neighbors too depend on the resources. However, traditionally each of the tribal villages had a culturally defined territory, the boundaries of which are identified by natural objects like hill streams, hill range or trees. All these natural resources within these territories belong to the village communities or common property. The natural resources like forest and land were allocated to the villages by the village communities and they had usurped right over the resources, the de jure ownership remaining with the community. Now let us discuss what are the classification of the common property resources, how it is classified. The term CPR connotes an economic resource or a facility which is communally or collectively owned by an identifiable community or a group of people. The group has the right to access and to use the resources which is regulated by conventions, traditions, customs and others. There are two types of resources. One is natural resources and the other one is artificial resources. The natural resources encompass land, water, air, plants, animals, place of entertainment, parks, hospital, etc. The collective ownership of any resources means that there is lack of well-defined individual private property rights to co-users of the resources. So, CPRs implies that there is an open access to resources for certain group of people and there is free use rights ambiguity in the ownership rights of the resources. Bromley in the year 1989 conceptualizes CPRs as private property for a group with organizational rules circumscribing that nature of rights and responsibilities existing within the groups with respect to them. The common property resources access and use are regulated by formal as well as by informal institutions. The formal institutions refer to the rule which human beings devise, and the informal institutions, it refers to the conventions and codes of behaviors. In the absence of resource regulating institutions, the resources enumerated are not common property resources. Village community or clans were such institutions that were used to control the common property resources. The statistics show that out of a total land area of 330 million hectares in India, only about 140 to 147 million hectares are cultivated. The remaining 190 million hectares consisting of forests, woodlands, grasslands, deserts, marshes, rivers, lakes, shorelines and other forms of common properties support many other activities like forestry, fishery, livestock rearing and provide daily requirements like food, fuel, fodders and medicines. And according to an estimate, the CPR's land in the country comes to 21.55% of the total geographical area. Arnold and Stewart in the year 1991, they noted three main types of common property resources which are available. First, it is available in the arid and semi-arid regions. These are about 20 hectares of CPR land per village, which is typically heavily degraded under open access usages. Second type of common property resources which is available in the hill, that is comprised to 60 to 80% of the total land area, mainly in the form of forest. The third type is which is available in the forest belt across central India. CPRs consist of minor forest products and some timber. Biswas in the year 2006, he identifies three types of common property resources. One is altruistic and the second one is free riders, third one is conditional. In the altruistic type of common property resources, he says this arises when people contribute to maintain a resource without expecting others to do likewise. And in the second one, free riders, this emerge when people fail to contribute to maintain resources with the expectation that others will contribute to maintain it. And the last one, the third one is conditional type. This arises when all members of the groups fail to subscribe to the rules governing the use of the resources. Now let us discuss what are the common property resources in tribal areas. In the tribal areas, the most visible common property resources are land and forest, and other things fall within these two. We also find various socio-cultural factors maintaining balance in the tribal territory or surrounding resources. Gadgil in the year 1990 is of the view that two major social systems of major resource use prevail in the post-colonial India. According to him, the older one characteristic of the hunting, gathering, shifting cultivation societies cover most of the hill tracts, its territory as common property. Further, the society as a whole organizes a pattern of resources used on this land, including allocation of plot for cultivation in a given year. The flow of the material is within the territory, though there are some exchanges with outside, for example, honey and ivory for metal. However, the exchanges are quantitatively insignificant, so that the material cycles are closed over the spatial scale of a tribal territory. This means that the tribal population has the real stake in the security of the resource base of their territory and evolved a number of cultural traditions to ensure its sustenance. These not only include long fallow period in the cycle of rotation of shifting cultivation, but also selective retention of valuable trees such as mango while felling for slash and burn. Thus, forest and land are the most important common property resources of the tribal community. The rights to forest are appropriated through collective participation in the form of hunting, food gathering, grazing and collection. The forests are regarded mostly as a common property resource. The lands are owned by both community and individual. There are three types of land owning structures in the tribal areas. They are community land, which belongs to the villages, land belonging to the clan, and the land owned by the individual members. Now let us sum up what we have gone through so far. The common property resources are defined as the natural resources collectively owned by a village or communities. In these resources, a group of people have co-equal use rights, specifically rights that exclude the use of those resources by other people, and we also knew that they are the sources of livelihood for the marginalized sections of the communities. We also discussed that the forest and land are the most important common property resources of the tribal community. The rights to forest are appropriate through collective participation in the form of hunting, food gathering, grazing and collection. We also discussed that the lands are owned by both community and individual. And also we saw that the natural resources like forest and land are allocated to the villages by the village communities, and they have rights over the resources. And there is also a growing awareness of the significance of common property resources in the rural areas. In the past, these were neglected by policymakers and planners because there is increasing population pressure, institutional changes, privatization due to commercialization, mechanization. These all played a very important role in the deterioration of these resources. So, keeping in view the growing importance of these natural resources in the emerging economic and ecological concept, these issues have caught attention. And when we look at what are the notions of territory and common property resources, they are very closely associated with the notion of tribe. In fact, one cannot imagine of tribes, at least in classical sense, without being identified with territories that have sustained them from time immemorial. Tribes are also known for practicing common property resources, which among others provides livelihood and binds them socially and emotionally. Thus, we see the notions of commons, also known as common property resources, and tribes as inextricably linked with each other. In fact, commons is one of the significant features in the life of tribals. So learners, I hope you would have understood the concept or the meaning and the features of the tribal territories and common property resources. We will discuss other aspects in the next part. Thank you.